All right, looks like we've got a good number of folks rolling in, so I'll go ahead and get us started today. Thanks everybody for joining. My name is Jenny Sumner. I am a group manager of modeling and analysis at the National Renewable Energy Lab, and excited today to talk to you about the utility and grid operator technical assistance work that's being launched through the U.S. Department of Energy. We are recording this webinar today, so if you are not able to capture all the notes or all the detail, know that it is being recorded and it will be posted to the page listed here. We will have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. To submit a question, please type it into the Q&A box. And we will run through those questions. If for some reason we are not able to get to your question, we will make note of it and make sure to follow up. For any technical issues, please check your audio settings under the audio tab, and you can use the chat function if you are getting persistent technical issues. So for our agenda today, we're going to start with a welcome and some opening remarks from our DOE sponsors on this program. We'll then provide a program overview. We are fortunate to have many different ways right now that utilities and grid operators can receive assistance through the Department of Energy. So we'll walk through these 4 different opportunities. We'll be talking about the evaluation process and timeline, and then provide some examples from national labs supporting these projects to give you a flavor of, potential things that you could receive support from under these programs. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have some time for Q&A at the end, but please feel free to submit your question at any time. With that, I wanted to welcome Paul Spitzen, who is an energy technology specialist at the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, to provide some opening remarks. I'll turn it over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Jenny. Hey, everybody. I'm Paul Spitzen. I'm a senior advisor in the renewable energy part of ERE. I want to thank all of you for joining for what is a long overdue service from the Department of Energy. We're really excited to offer multiple on-demand and solicitation-based opportunities for utilities and grid operators to leverage the national labs, both personnel and facilities, to solve critical near-term and long-term challenges across a wide range of topics, from everything to system planning and operations to interconnection to reliability and resilience. Our ultimate goal is to give industry a central access point and work the inter-DOE and inter-lab coordination behind the scenes. What you'll see today is our initial iteration, and we're constantly looking for feedback about ways to improve both the structure and delivery of this effort. So please feel free to reach out at any time. And like I said, this is we really envision this to be a work in progress. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure whatever we deliver is really helpful for industry as a whole to move forward. So please feel free to reach out. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff.
Thanks, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Jeff Dennis. I am Deputy Director for Transmission in the Grid Deployment Office here at DOE, and really excited to be partnering with EERE and Paul and Jenny and the whole team on this effort. The GDO's mission is to catalyze investments necessary to ensure a reliable, resilient, and cost-effective electricity grid for the American public. Recent analysis from our national labs that we've released shows that we need to double to triple our existing transmission capacity by 2050 to meet rising demand, address impacts of extreme weather, and deliver low-cost clean energy supplies to consumers. And that analysis also shows that in futures where we really optimize and maximize transmission investments, we produce the lowest cost and most reliable outcomes for consumers as the grid evolves and transitions. And with that in mind, we're taking a number of steps to catalyze transmission investments, including enhancing transmission planning processes and tools, deploying commercial facilitation tools provided by Congress, and improving and streamlining permitting processes. And finally, engaging in outreach and delivering technical assistance to states and industries. Here, we're really excited to partner with EERE and the Grid Operator and Utility Technical Assistance Program to deliver technical assistance to grid operators and utilities to assist them in the near-term critical task of updating their planning processes in response to FERC Order number 1920. And we'll talk a little bit more in a minute about some of the things that we have in mind that we think regional planners, grid operators, and utilities might want to take advantage of working with our national labs. Like Paul said for EERE, this is also a work in progress for us. We're looking to work closely with you, tailor our delivery and our opportunities to meet your needs, and really would encourage you to reach out to us throughout this rolling technical assistance opportunity process to discuss what you may need and how we can bring lab analysis, lab tools, and capabilities to your efforts to update and strengthen your existing planning processes. With that, I'll turn it back over, but I'm delighted to talk further about this.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. With that, I wanted to begin with a summary of the offerings that are available right now. I'll do this high-level overview, and then we'll also talk through each offer in more depth. But to get us started, wanted to first talk about a program called Key Assist. This program is designed to support utilities and grid operators in projects that are less than 2 years long. We envision them being about $500K to $1 million in lab support. So the funds would not be going out to utilities or RTOs or ISOs, but would be supporting lab staff time and equipment or other things that would be needed to provide technical assistance. Under Key Assist, the investor-owned utilities and RTOs are required to provide in-kind cost share, but that is not a requirement for municipal utilities or cooperative utilities. Some of the exciting things that we envision supporting under this offer are focused on operational architectures or specific technology configurations. This could require use of lab testing systems or facilities at any of the national labs that that are listed, and we can work that out on the lab side as well. The other main focus area under Key Assist we envision is thinking about integrated planning challenges. So when we talk about integrated challenges here, we're thinking about not just a buildings question or a vehicle electrification question or a distribution system planning question, but how are those things all interacting with each other? Selection process we'll talk in more detail about, but there is a public solicitation open now, and DOE will be selecting awards with recommendations from the national labs. We really want to make sure that applicants who are selected have potential, pathway to implement whatever comes out of this technical assistance. So maybe that could be, informing an investment decision, informing a PUC docket, or other process that may be going on at the utility or ISO. We also want to make sure that project outcomes can be publicly reported under Key Assist. We will not share confidential data or anything like that, but we want to make sure that the work under this program is replicable and can be communicated to other utilities or ISOs or RTOs. The second program we have right now is Interconnection Assistance. This is a little bit shorter, so about a 12-month time frame. It could be longer on a case-by-case basis. These projects are about 100 to 150K in technical assistance and does require cost share from IOUs and RTOs, but not from unis and co-ops. There are a couple focus areas that are applicable to the interconnection assistance. The first one is looking at technical scoping of host capacity maps or heat maps that meet or exceed FERC Order 2023 requirements. Second is looking at evaluation of mitigation options during interconnection studies, incorporating alternative transmission technologies such as dynamic line rating, advanced conductors, as well as capability of wind, solar, and battery storage. Third piece that could apply in this offer is adoption of a harmonized and/or comprehensive interconnection requirements or standards consistent with IEEE standard 2800 to 2002. And the last piece is developing cybersecurity requirements and protocols for interconnection agreements and supporting secure data sharing. And we'll talk more about, possible interconnection work later in the webinar. In terms of selection process, very similar to the Key Assist offer. So there is a public solicitation open right now, and awards will be selected by DOE with lab recommendations. Applicants here must demonstrate an actionable need for the assistance, and we do require that project outcomes will be publicly reported. The third program to highlight today, we are calling Rolling Technical Assistance. Rolling, as you can envision probably, because applications are open now and will be accepted on a rolling basis. So unlike the first two programs I talked about, you'll be able to apply to this program at any time. We envision the duration of the assistance being about 6 months and including about 100 hours of subject matter expert time. And there is no cost share for rolling technical assistance. Any type of utility and ISO RTO is eligible to apply. And we have a large list of focus areas. So this could be load forecasting, distribution system planning, anything related to DERs or VGI, building electrification, T&D coordination, bulk power planning. I would say it's pretty broad in terms of the focus areas that could be supported. In terms of selection process, the requests are on a rolling basis. So please take a look at the application and submit something once you feel like you have a solid idea and something that is ready to be worked on. We do require that project outcomes will be publicly reported. We won't be sharing any confidential data as part of this either. And while this is a shorter amount of technical assistance, we still want to make sure that applicants demonstrate an actionable need for that assistance. So will there be some sort of decision point or upcoming action that the utility or RSO or ITO will take based on the work? I alluded to this earlier, but we have a large team of national labs that are able to support in this portfolio of work. Again, I'm with the National Renewable Energy Lab. I've got a couple colleagues on this call as well that will be supporting these various offers. We've got Berkeley National Lab, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, Sandia National Laboratories, Idaho National Laboratory, and Argonne National Laboratory able to support. And later in the webinar, we will hear some examples of work that has been done at the national labs, just to tee up some ideas, not to say that applications need to look exactly like the examples we will be providing. So with that, I want to dig in just a little bit deeper on Key Assist, the first program. This program, as I mentioned, is open to all utility types as well as RTOs and ISOs. The project timeline is less than 2 years, and the anticipated lab resources are about 500K to 1 million. We've already talked about different project types, but just as more of a summary, we're thinking about operational challenges here on a utility or grid operator's grid. We're also thinking about mid to long-term planning challenges, as well as interconnection. The funding for this does go directly to the labs, so the labs will not be signing CRADAs or other agreements. It will be work that's done at the national labs to support the utilities and grid operators. We expect to announce the awards sometime this winter. So we put the public announcement out earlier this fall, and hope to make selections in winter timeframe. When you're thinking about, how will you be evaluated when you propose something, we've got a list of selection criteria. One thing that's really important and we put first is that we want to make sure there's a real-time technical challenge or a near-term planning challenge that the utility or grid operator is facing. We also want to make sure that if this is a planning challenge, we want to know how the utilities regulator will be engaged, and make sure that, the work coming out of here is actually informing that planning challenge. We also want to make sure that this program is not doing work that could be done by the private sector. So we want to think about, what is really core to the problem, and does it require national lab experts to solve it? We also want to make sure that the results can be shared publicly. So we're not going to be generating intellectual property or dealing with that component. We want to make sure the lessons from these projects are shared to other utilities and grid operators. For this level of effort, we imagine the projects will feature multi-technology, scalable analysis with system-level benefits and national impact. We want to make sure that the work is aligned with EERE's multi-year program plan, which is their sort of vision for work that is done at the national labs and throughout the EERE sector. We want the work to be completed within about 1 to 2 years for about $500K to $1 million. So we don't ask you to price out how much technical assistance you need, but if you have questions about, what's an appropriate level of work, feel free to put those in the Q&A box. And the last thing here is just that we want to make sure, we're working on projects that require R&D innovation or take advantage of unique capabilities at the national labs. Couple notes just on cost share for those investor-owned organizations. We do not require cash cost share. We are requiring in-kind cost share. So this could be things like staff time, data, equipment, things like that. So we will be asking for documentation just of what that in-kind cost share would look like. With that, I want to turn it over to Dexter Hendricks, who will be talking about the interconnection assistance.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, apologies for no video. I have really horrible bandwidth in my apartment, so to save us all from a really jittery experience, I'll keep the camera off. So my name is Dexter Hendricks. I'm a technology manager with the solar office here at DOE, and I'm here to present you guys about the technical assistance, the interconnection TA aspect of this program. So this TA program is supported by the DOE's Interconnection Innovation Exchange, I2X, and it seeks to provide non-ISO transmission providers and distribution utilities with access to national lab researchers and cutting-edge models that can address their interconnection needs. Eligibility is limited to municipal utilities, co-ops, and non-ISO investor-owned utilities. Next slide, please. The project timeline is 12 months, as Jenny said, or longer on a case-by-case basis. Anticipated funding is 100K to 150K. And really some examples of projects we want to look into, in addition to what Jenny said, which were things related to transmission interconnection. We're also really going to have a big focus here as well on distribution interconnection. So short and intermediate term challenges that were identified and can be found in the I2X Interconnection Innovation Exchange roadmaps. We have a roadmap for distribution interconnection as well as transmission interconnection. Some of those challenges include adoption of harmonized and/or comprehensive interconnection requirements or standards consistent with IEEE standard 2800, as well as the distribution counterpart, which would be 1547, 2018, developing cybersecurity requirements and protocols for interconnection agreements and support secure data sharing, incorporating interconnection into planning processes such as IRP, including DER impact transmission system planning, developing automated technical screens for DER interconnection studies, developing protocols for dynamic or flexible DER interconnection solutions and services, or other short-term and medium-term interconnection solutions that are deemed critical by the applicants. Next slide, please. So as far as selection criteria goes, here is a quick snapshot. Applicants must demonstrate an actionable need for assistance consistent with the solutions identified in the transmission interconnection or draft distribution energy resource interconnection roadmaps, be actionable by the utility for an upcoming decision, filing, or other activity, be relevant to a broad set of non-ISO transmission providers or distribution utilities. Again, the real onus of this project is, as Jenny outlined, is that we really want to get the learnings from them and share the results so that others can learn from what we've actually accomplished. And also, of course, support ERE technologies, and project outcomes will be publicly reported. So confidential data will not be shared, but we do really want to make sure that people come into this understand that we'll be following the projects and reporting on them so others can learn.
Great, thank you, Dexter. We may come back to you if there are questions in the Q&A about that offer. I'm going to speak a little bit to the rolling technical assistance, and then we'll also have Jeff come back and talk more specifically about GDO's component to this. But yeah, maybe Jeff, I'll have you kick us off for this section, actually thinking about how GDO and EERE are working together.
Sure. Yeah, thanks very much. So the Grid Deployment Office, as I mentioned earlier, is taking a number of steps to catalyze needed transmission investments, and many of those are in the transmission planning area, seeking to enhance transmission planning through efforts like our recently announced National Transmission Planning Study. And picking up on that work, we have been tasked as the lead with offering technical assistance to support long-term regional transmission planning efforts that are getting underway in response to FERC's recent Order 1920. That order requires utilities in regional planning entities, so RTOs, ISOs, as well as utilities who have formed a regional planning entity in non-RTO ISO regions, to enhance their long-term regional plans, to consider more benefits, take into account more scenarios, including extreme weather scenarios, and plan on a longer term basis. And so our goal here is really to offer technical assistance in those areas. We hear often that there are many entry points in DOE for technical assistance. And so to try to simplify and streamline that, we will offer rolling TA for planning entities in this area through the Utility and Grid Operator Technical Assistance Program, partnering with ERE. Other topics will be funded by ERE, the Office of Policy, or other DOE offices, but of course we will be funding efforts related to transmission planning activities and FERC Order 1920. Next slide, I think.
And
I think this might be back to you. Yep.
Yeah, I can run through this one. So just in general, the structure of the rolling TA is designed to be easier entry point. So fill out a web application at any time, and there will be a cycle of ongoing review by the labs and DOE to select these projects. But wanted to make sure we had an entry point for utilities and grid operators that was available at any time, and not just a once a year or periodic process. So available at any time. It is about 100 hours of subject matter expertise time from one of the labs. It's eligible by any electric utility or grid operator. There could be a lot of things in this category in terms of project types, but thinking about preparation of compliance proposals, evaluation and selection criteria for different technologies, cost allocation methodologies has been coming up quite a bit. Thinking about, best available data, assumptions, inputs, or analytical tools that could be used by a utility or grid operator. We could provide long-term scenario development and modeling, as well as development of extreme weather scenarios and sensitivities. I would say this is our kind of high-level list of project types, and you'll hear some examples later as well. But yeah, there may be things that fall outside of this that you still want to apply for. The funding for this is direct to the lab, so you would be assigned a lab point of contact to support on the project and make sure you got the assistance that you need. And we will be selecting these on a rolling basis. So anytime you're ready, please go ahead and submit your application. And with that, I'll pass back to Jeff, to talk a little bit more about the Grid Deployment Office and how they envision supporting on 1920.
Sure. Yeah. So thanks. And your previous slide um, said a lot about some of the different kinds of projects that we hope to be able to support here, including preparation of compliance proposals, scenario development is a particular interest of ours, extreme weather scenario development. Our national labs have developed a lot of tools and insights on that that they can provide assistance uh, uh, to grid operators and utilities as they work through compliance with order number 1920. And I already talked a lot about GDO's mission, so I won't spend more time on that here. So maybe we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so and Jenny covered a lot of this as well, but just to repeat, the focus here is really on supporting planning entities who are in the process of preparing their compliance filings and preparing to implement new planning processes consistent with FERC order number 1920 over the long term. And we think that working through the Utility and Grid Operator Technical Assistance Program will allow us to do this quickly and without delay. Jenny went through some of the things we're looking for here, and I mentioned some of those earlier as well. But again, I would emphasize these are broad offerings, and we can tailor them to address particular needs that regions are seeing as they develop their compliance filings and develop their plans for ongoing implementation of Order 1920. And what I mean by that is, continued development of scenarios, continued updating and refreshing of the best available data, assumptions and tools to use in those processes. These are all things that we would like to offer technical assistance on, and are hoping to see some proposals come in through this rolling TA opportunity. More TA opportunities will come later too. Of course, this is just our first iteration. So, as Paul mentioned, and I mentioned at the top as well, continue talking with us. In addition to utility and grid operator technical assistance, we're also launching technical assistance to states on FERC order number 1920. That order gives states really a lot of new opportunities to participate in the regional transmission planning process, and we're looking to support those as well. So much more to come. First iteration here, and happy to talk with folks about it as they take a look at this and think about entering the portal.
Great, thanks, Jeff. In general, for rolling technical assistance, we want to support projects that are actionable by the utility. So there's an upcoming decision, filing, or other activity. We do want to make sure results can be shared publicly. We also want to make sure that these efforts are relevant to a broad set of utilities. So we know that utilities may have very specific questions to their grid or operational challenge that they are working on, but we want to make sure that the support we provide could be relevant to others as well. So it can't be so narrow that no other utility would benefit from hearing the lessons learned of that project. This work is funded by EERE and GDO, so we want to make sure that the work is focused on technologies or grid deployment or resilience goals that are active in the EERE or grid technology space. And then the last note we had here is just maybe more some context. We know that in some cases we may get applications from a utility and a grid operator, working on the same thing, or we may have a utility come in through this program and a state come in through a different state technical assistance program. So DOE and the labs will be thinking about how to put firewalls in place to mitigate any challenges that may come into play if that is the case. Great. So that is our run through of programs. I wanted to just highlight upcoming application deadlines. So November 26th is the deadline for the Key Assist application, as well as the Interconnection Assistance application. We expect to make notifications this winter, so 2024, possibly going into early 2025 for those two programs, Utility Key Assist and Interconnection. For rolling TA, as I mentioned, please apply at any time. There will be just regular communication on where your application is at and whether you have been selected. So with that, we're about halfway in, and I want to make sure we cover some project examples. So I will kick us off with a couple examples from NREL work that has been done in the utility space, and then pass it around the virtual room to my colleagues at other national labs for them to share their highlights as well. I wanted to provide one example of some work that NREL has done with the Golden Valley Electric Association up in Fairbanks, Alaska. The situation is that the utility there was planning to retire a coal plant, about 50 megawatts, and came, trying to understand what do we replace it with? And they had some ideas about using wind and storage, but didn't know, how much wind and storage, where it should be sited on their system, some questions like that. So workflow on a project like this tends to be starting with production cost modeling, thinking about what sizes of systems on the wind and battery side would be needed and how would it affect the utility's grid and their connections to other areas. The second piece of workflow is looking at grid stability analysis. So not just what size of battery or what size of wind, but where do you put those on the grid and how would grid stability change in the summer versus winter and during unplanned outages. The last piece of workflow is looking at controller validation. This is a piece of work that can be done at NREL's Aries platform, which is looking at really does the controller designed to operate new wind and storage assets work with the existing system controller and existing assets. So thinking really about that pre-implementation phase of will things work like you envision needing them to. Potential impact, in this case, the utility was able to move forward issuing a RFP for a battery. They took some next steps on getting wind development in and are still figuring out basically how to retire their coal plant. They were also able to secure loans and grants from the USDA's Empowering Rural America program, which is going to be supporting some of that battery storage, transmission work, and refinancing of debt for the Healy Unit 2, that fossil unit. So I wanted to share that just as an example of one place where NREL has supported a utility. One quick other example has been looking at validating a real-time model of Portland General Electric's Connected Community project. This has 2 feeders and about a little over 4,000 homes modeled I won't go into details about the modeling scheme, but using field data really to provide confidence in future simulation results. So this is a really cool project that eventually, would support the building of about 1.4 megawatts of flexible load resource in the community. It looks at, more than 500 buildings, everything from energy efficiency to connected devices, solar storage and EVs, and a lot of other things. So thinking not just about transmission system or large utility scale wind and solar plants, but on the opposite side of things, looking at the very distributed level. With that, I will pass to Hayden Reeve with PNNL. And Hayden, you're welcome to introduce yourself as you walk through your work with PNNL.
Excellent. Thank you, Jenny. Good afternoon and good morning. I'm Hayden Reeve from PNNL. I do a lot of work in both integrated assessment as well as grid edge integration and coordination. And today I'll be presenting a couple of projects that colleagues of mine have been working on. supporting both utilities and communities that we've done. The first was supporting the city of Sitka and particularly their electrical department. The city of Sitka is primarily fed by hydroelectric plants with diesel generators to provide backup in cases of contingency, and also for years where there might be lower rainfall and lower hydro resource. And so as part of their planning process, they're trying to anticipate what future load growth looks like, including load growth from the electrification of homes and transportation systems there, as well as trying to understand what future weather variability might mean for both their hydro resource as well as alternative generation capacity like wind and solar. And so this study was supporting that long-term planning process to understand these different load growth scenarios as well as generation capacity options, and then work out a strategy that included an effort to really minimize the rate impact. So the current system with hydro means quite reasonable electricity rates, but when backup diesel is needed, there can be a increase in system cost. And then also understanding how these future options might bolster the energy and resiliency within the system, particularly with future potential climate scenarios. And so this fed in to help the city of Sitka in their planning process to work towards different future options. So if we go to the next slide. So this next example is for an actual sort of off-grid system. This was support of the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. And in this case, this is a landfill that has electricity supplied to it by diesel generators. And they just operate just during the day when the site is staffed to provide sort of groundwater management. And so the assessment here was to understand what options were for cheaper generation options that could run round the clock and essentially support a microgrid that would provide 24/7 generation capacity that could also be used for other services like electric vehicle charging. So this was a case of supporting the community in assessing these different options, what they would mean in terms of cost and viability, and then starting to go through a decision-making process. So these are two, examples. We help a ton of other utilities in other ways as well, including energy storage assessment as well. And so with that, I will pass it over to Catherine from LBNL.
Thanks. Yeah, take it away, Catherine.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Catherine Shalminski. I work with Berkeley National Lab. I will be presenting an example of a technical assistance project we provided to Ozinki, Alaska, another Alaska case, as part of the ETIP initiative. So Ozinki applied to ETIP for support. Ozinki is a small remote community on Spruce Island, Alaska, that is powered by diesel generators and a hydroelectric turbine. And so part of the problem we were trying to solve is that the system is plagued by aging infrastructure, declining reliability, and increasing costs. So the overall objective was to develop an integrated plan that improved the power system to transition away from fossil fuels and to become more reliable and resilient system powered by renewable energy. And so the major contributions of this project was to develop an optimization model. We presented 3 scenarios for increasing renewable energy share and reducing the diesel from about 50% in the current system to 30% in the new system. So in the figures at the top is the scenario planning. So in the first case is the business as usual. The middle case is the least cost, and the last case is the spinning reserve that incorporated battery storage and enhanced reliability. And so each of these options had different costs and technology combinations. So this project provided actionable recommendations for implementation in the near and long term to achieve reliability and resiliency goals, along with kind of further considerations for integrating other renewable energy options. The project also created an interactive tool, which you can see in the figure on the bottom, that allowed for Helsinki to rerun the analysis and change around the different assumptions and cases to see what their options are in the future as well. So that provides an example of one of Berkeley Lab's technical assistance projects that's kind of exemplary of the optimization modeling. So with that, I'll turn it back over to NREL, to Jenny. Thanks.
Thanks, Catherine. We've got one more set of examples focused on interconnection. So we've got Killian McKenna here from NREL to walk through 2 examples on this side. Thanks, Killian.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, Killian McKenna here. I'm a group manager in our grid planning analysis center. And we do a lot of work with utilities and the distribution, so a lot of distribution utilities across the country. So a lot of work on a DER interconnection, and here are some examples of some kind of technical assistance that we've done. And I know we have extensive capabilities on both the interconnection study process and also on the hosting capacity side. So through Precise, we've done a lot of work on looking at the technical screening process, the study process, integrating AMI, GIS, interconnection technical data, being able to run time series power flow, which enables the kind of next generation of interconnection studies to be done. And then also with our analysis and hosting capacity through NREL's DISCO, we've been able to perform both solar and EV hosting capacity analysis using power flow models and being able to do both snapshot and time series hosting capacity analysis, which also enables upgrade analysis too. So next slide. So just some recent examples that we've been able to provide through DOE's Interconnection Innovation Exchange that Dexter was talking to earlier. We've had 2 projects here recently where we're able to provide technical assistance to utilities across the state of Colorado, both for some municipal, cooperative, and IOUs in Colorado, and then municipals in California. This was on both on kind of delivering an interconnection roadmap for how a utility could move beyond more basic screening, how they could take advantage of, more detailed application intake, how they could leverage technical data like AMI, be able to do much greater kind of study process to give that confidence for raising hosting capacity. The other piece here was working with the utility in California on developing flexible interconnection profiles. So for those utilities that are hitting very high levels of DER integration and hitting their limits on hosting capacity, was there opportunities to leverage flexible interconnection and leveraging limited export profils as specified through IEEE 1547 and UL 1741 to enable that next generation of interconnection. So yeah, and Jenny, that's back to you. That's just a quick whistle stop tour of some of our work on hosting capacity and interconnection on the DER side.
Thanks, Killian. Appreciate you hopping on. Before we sort of officially wrap up, we wanted to give folks a sense of what you might be asked in the application. You can go ahead and look at the full PDF of each application online before you go in and submit it through a web form. But generally, the types of things we're looking for are your contact information. So who are you? What organization are you with? Where are you? We are focused on, understanding a summary of the challenge that you as a utility or a grid operator are having. Is it a planning challenge, a regulatory challenge, or some other technical challenge? We would like to know how the technical assistance would inform some type of upcoming utility decision or grid operator decision, regulatory filing, or other opportunities. We'd like a sense of what has your organization already done on that topic? Sort of what's the starting place that you're coming in to the question with? We're also trying to capture if you have previously gotten technical assistance from any DOE national laboratories. That can help us understand which lab might be best able to continue to support you, so if we have that context. And then we'd like to know just generally, does your organization have the capacity to perform on this request with the national lab. So even for those utilities that are not providing official cost share, they're, we need to have some point of contact at the utility or grid operator, somebody to make sure the work is on track and relevant and implementable by the organization. So that is our three offers that are available now. I do want to give a little bit of time to Eric Pohl, who is supporting a webinar series focused on utility planning resources for the energy transition. And I'll turn it over to you, Eric, to talk about this upcoming webinar series.
Sure. Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, Eric Pohl here. I'm a researcher at NREL within our Grid Planning and Analysis Center. Just before we wrap up, I want to go over this upcoming webinar series we have. It's an Office of Policy funded project titled Utility Planning Resources for the Energy Transition. The format of this is NREL is going to be hosting a series of webinars, 12 in total, over the next, I think, 4 months, covering a broad range of topics and highlighting things like industry trends, some of NREL's benchmark studies and tools, evolving industry best practices, tool sets, data resources, and then further DOE funding opportunities. You'll see here that our topic areas span both distribution and the bulk system. We've got focuses on integrated distribution planning, advanced load forecasting, DER integration, inverter-based futures, grid ops and grid modernization, cybersecurity, rates and tariffs, resiliency planning, T&D coordination, and resource adequacy. So we're hoping to touch a lot of the different areas that NREL works in. Anyone who wants to sign up for these webinars can just submit our interest form. It can be found at the link shown here in the bottom right. The first round of these webinars, which will take place from November to February, are going to be open to utility personnel only. And then future rounds of these webinars later in the spring of 2025 will be open to that broader energy community. Next slide, please. So our schedule is somewhat tentative, but we do have dates for our first 3 webinars already lined up in the month of November. So the first webinar on load forecasting is going to take place on the 7th. Generally, these will take place on Tuesdays and Thursdays and will last 90 minutes in total, with ample time for Q&A and discussion with NREL SMEs. And like I said, anyone who signs up, the interest form will receive the actual meeting invites for those webinars, and you can specify if you only want to attend some of them or all of them. So encourage folks to sign up if they're interested in these topics. That's all I got, Jenny.
Great, thank you. We are going to now just open a quick poll before we go into Q&A. So we're trying to get a sense of interest in these different offers. You've heard a lot of details about these programs. We know you may have more questions that we haven't gotten to, but we will get to later, and are happy to answer questions offline as well. But if you could go ahead and just, let us know if you are thinking of applying to one of the technical assistance pathways. Could be yes, could be no, could be maybe. And then thoughts on which pathway you plan to apply for, and you can check multiple boxes here. This is really just to help us inform anticipated numbers of applications and help us figure out continued outreach and things like that. So you're definitely not wedded to whatever you decide here, but we're just trying to get a little bit of context on where folks are at in understanding these pathways. So I'm gonna leave that open for maybe another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll go ahead and get started with a couple questions that have come in during the Q&A. So yeah, we'll just give it another 30 seconds or so for folks to reply to the questions. Great. Thank you everybody for responding to the poll. Appreciate it. That will help us going forward. So with that, we'll start answering some of the questions that have come in. Feel free to continue to submit questions as we're going through them. The first question was related to working with a rural islanded utilities that serve approximately between 50 and 200 people. Question is, how competitive do you think very small utilities would be in applications given the selection criteria? Yeah, Paul, I don't know if you want to weigh in on this one. I think from my perspective, I could speak to it, but I will give you a chance, Paul, to answer on this one.
Sure. I think there's no kind of bias towards larger or small utilities. We're really looking to see how we can use our resources to provide, industry with the biggest potential impact. So yeah, totally would love to have kind of smaller rural communities and co-ops submit applications.
Great, thanks, Paul. Another question came in just on, is there information on the NREL website with research topics that are of particular interest for the rolling TA program? I can take that one, being on the NREL side. So we do have the utility technical assistance page on nrel.gov. This webinar will be there as well with some of the slides that we've shared today. If that's not enough detail, or if you have questions on, does my topic fit, please reach out to us. We can help you navigate that. But in general, I would say it's pretty broad in terms of the types of things we could do under the rolling TA program. Another question about the rolling TA. So question is the rolling TA limited to interconnection related projects and support by GDO, or are other topics allowed? So no, the rolling technical assistance is actually very broad, and GDO is just funding anything that might come in related to 1920. But there are, very broad topics that could be covered under rolling technical assistance. So we'll make sure to, get that on the website and make sure that's clear as well. All right, we've got another question that has come in on, let me just go ahead and read it. If there is tremendous racial or income disparity across a muni, and the project technically would increase that disparity by increasing the energy burden if passed through the existing disparate customer base and is more expensive than commercial alternatives, would assistance still be offered? The hope is to secure the public. I'm not sure I fully understand that last piece, if this person wanted to clarify that. But I think the question is, focused on maybe understanding rates and energy burden and how just costs are passed through to different customer segments. That is something we could look at through the rolling TA program. And I know we have staff across national labs who are familiar with energy burden and rate calculations and answering some of those questions. So if that person wants to add any more context in the Q&A box, let me know. I'm not sure I'm capturing all of that. And then we've got one last question, unless folks submit any more while we're answering it. But question is on if there are commercial proposals for a project a municipality receives, but would prefer to capture the income of a project themselves using federal funding programs and services like these, is technical service assistance under this proposal still offered for these project types? I'm not sure I'm fully capturing this one either, so please correct in the Q&A box if we're not getting this right, or feel free to reach out to us. But I think the piece of eligibility here is that we need the utility or the grid operator to be the entity applying for technical assistance. If the question is on like how to have that utility or grid operator navigate other federal funding programs, yeah, they can come to us with that request. I think the consideration for national labs is that we are not able to help you, actually write proposals for other federal funding. But if you have a technical question that, needs to be answered by the utility, we can support there. That is the end of our questions that have come in, and I see we're also almost at time. So just a few quick reminders that are in the chat as well. We do have a website up that Thomas has provided the link for. We also have a sign up for more information. So if you want to fill out that quick form, we'll make sure you are on our list for further communication about these offers. But with that, I think, yeah, we can wrap up for today. I want to thank all of our presenters and all of the folks in the audience. And we ran through quite a bit of information today. So please reach out if you do have additional questions. But yeah, I think we'll go ahead and adjourn for today. And oh, sorry, we got one more question. One more late question. Is assistance offered to developers? We do not provide assistance to developers through this program. So it is just focused on utilities and grid operators. So that is, yeah, one of the parameters here. So with that, I think we do have all questions answered and are approaching time. So I'll go ahead and wrap us up. And thanks again, everybody. Appreciate the time.